Howdy, strangers, and welcome back to the Homeschool Library. I apologize for the neglect that I have given to this channel lately. I shouldn't be calling you the strangers. The stranger in this case is me. I'm the one who's been away. I apologize for that. I've hinted in a couple of past videos. This is a super busy time of year. Springtime on the farm is already astronomically busy. In addition to everything else going on, we got spring ball with the kids. Every night is something. My daughter's got dance and softball. My son's been playing soccer, so if it's not a game, it's practice. 4 nights of the week we are gone. Weekends in the month of May and the second half of April have just been stupid. We've barely been home. So the library channel here in the homeschool has kind of gotten pushed to the back burner. I apologize for that. I've got a lot of videos in my head ready to go, like brain backlog, I guess, that I need to just sit down and get filmed before I forget what I want to talk about. And this is one of them here, today's video. I've actually tried to film this video twice already, and for whatever reason, both times, the quality just came out miserable. So I'll give it a third shot here today. I wanted to film this last night. Again, I thought I was going to have some time to get it done. However, last night there were wildfires all over my part of the country. There were at least 3. We couldn't actually see any flames from our property, but you could see the ash raining down on our front porch. Everything it smelled like smoke, so bad I'm still coughing this morning. So, really giving all the best wishes and encouragement to the firefighters that have been out there working all night to get that stuff contained. I don't know the damage that was caused, but anyway, hey, think of and pray for your first responders, wherever they may be. They're working hard, saving lives, saving property. And that this time of year, it's an ever-present danger for us where we live, is those fires. So that is aside the point here. We're here to talk about the homeschool library. And in this case, specifically, the book that we're doing today is this one right here. This is Myths from Mesopotamia. If you remember, this is one of those books on my 50 by 50 reading list, or the 50 books that I intend to have read by the time I turn 50 years old, which is in just a little over 4 years now. This is book, I think, 3 on that list. So we're 3 down, 47 to go. I had read this, well, not this exactly. When I was compiling my 50 by 50 list, what I had on there was the Enuma Elish was a book that I wanted to have read. The Enuma Elish is the Babylonian epic of creation. I had read previously an old Penguin edition of the Epic of Gilgamesh that I have. I read that years ago. I think I've gone through it maybe a couple of times. And it is an older translation. There have been more tablets found and additions made and edits made to older texts. So this also had the Epic of Gilgamesh in it, but I bought this volume specifically for the Enuma Elish. But as I was looking through it, I just had to read the entire thing, including Gilgamesh in this as well. This was fascinating. And I will be referring to this often in years to come. I absolutely love this edition. This is from Oxford, the newest and revised edition. This is a translation by Stephanie Daly. I think it's Daly. I tell you, her name, any translation or edit I see on any volume like this that's got Stephanie Daly's name, I will be picking it up based on that name alone. She did a fantastic job in compiling the edits, the notes, the introductions to every piece throughout here. So just to go through some of the stories that are contained. This is a compilation of many of the myths, stories, and legends from ancient region of Mesopotamia. Not only Babylonian, but Assyrian, Akkadian, and some other cultures as well in there. And where there are differences between, say, like the Akkadian or the Babylonian version of a story, it will often provide both, or at least notes comparing the two. I'll start off with Gilgamesh. No, actually, I won't. I'll start off with the Epic of Atrahasis, which is the first story in this, and chronologically, it takes place before the story of Gilgamesh. If you know the story of Gilgamesh, which is probably the most famous story involved here, he was a king of Uruk, and his friendship with the wild man Enkidu and their dealings with the gods and goddesses of that part of the ancient world, until finally his friend Enkidu was basically killed by a vengeful deity. And then Gilgamesh understands his own impending mortality, so he takes off to go find the immortal Utnapishtim. He builds the big square boat and takes off. No, I'm sorry, I'm conflating the two. He takes off on his journey, partly through the underworld, which is a fantastic part of the story, one of my favorites, to go find Utnapishtim. Utnapishtim had been the Atrahasis of the older Atrahasis epic. Atrahasis is basically the Akkadian Noah. To put that in biblical terms, which is most commonly understood to most of us here, at least in the Western world. The gods had gotten tired of the human race, so they sent the flood to wipe them all out. Atrahasis was the one chosen to build the boat. It was a big square cubicle boat. How anybody thought that was going to float, I don't know. But apparently in this case of the story, it worked, and Utnapishtim was then granted immortality. By the time the Gilgamesh story came into play, the name had been changed to Utnapishtim, and it was Utnapishtim that Gilgamesh sought out to find. Utnapishtim told him that there was a plant that would not necessarily grant immortality, but it would keep him young. So he goes to find this plant, but at the last second, it is stolen away from him by a serpent. And I found that interesting, not only in just the story of the Mesopotamian Noah, whether it be Atrahasis or Utnapishtim. To me, it's very, very clear that these stories come from it. There's a common origin in many of these tales, and you can take that and go across the globe, and there's over 300 deluge stories that all have striking similarities. And to me personally, I don't see how anyone could argue that there's not a common origin for these stories. From as far away as the Mesoamericans to China, they all kind of have these same original stories. We just, in this case, this is the Babylonian version of that. But I found it fascinating that how immortality was stolen away from Gilgamesh by a serpent. And if you've ever read the Garden of Eden story, which I hope you have, the parallels there, I think, are very obvious. It's just that it doesn't seem like one story is borrowed or stolen from another story, which is often the argument that you hear. I think it very much seems to me like those are two stories told from very different perspectives. And I found that fascinating throughout here. Comparative religion, comparative mythology is, and just comparative culture throughout the world, especially the ancient world, fascinates me. So that's what I was really getting out of this. Beyond the Atrahasis and Gilgamesh story, there are many other great, wonderful tales in here. The descent of Inanna into the underworld, it was another great one. Inanna and Ishtar are kind of the same deity, sort of. The story of Marduk and his slaying of the chaos serpent is another story that's echoed throughout Hebrew scripture in the Bible. And another one that I found very interesting was the Anzu, Legend of the Anzu story. And what I found so interesting about that one is that I've never read the entirety of the Arabian Nights stories. I've read snippets of them. I've read many of the Sinbad stories, and I've got abridged version, like watered down kids version of some of the Arabian Nights stories that I had from when I was younger. And so many of those, the stories from the Arabian Nights, come from here as well. They sounded so. I knew I recognized some of the events, the plot lines, maybe you'd say, that sounded very similar to the stories of Sinbad and other Arabian Nights stories. And if you think about that, it makes sense. The Arabian Nights stories were compiled in, I think, in or near Baghdad about 1,000 years ago, on the 9th, 10th century, a little over 1,000 years ago. Baghdad is not that far from ancient Babylon. So those stories as well have got to argue for a common origin. As times change and they were told for a different perspective, a different audience, but they can all be traced back to some of these. And that was so cool as I was reading this. The Arabian Nights, all 3 volumes of it, are part of my 50 by 50 list. So I'm going to have this close at hand when I get to that. I'm very excited to read those now. It's going to be a while. I've got to psych myself up to read those. That's going to be a marathon. Because the Penguin edition of the Arabian Nights are 3 doorstops. You put those all together, it's about that wide on the shelf. So yeah, that's going to be fun. I've got to emotionally prepare myself for the Arabian Nights. When I did that one, when I added that one to my 50 by 50 list, I didn't realize that it was that large. I should have probably broken that down into 3 books instead of 1. But hey, I made a commitment to myself and I'm going to stick with it. But yeah, this is not a review of Arabian Nights. We're talking about the myths from Mesopotamia. Fascinating volume. Absolutely loved this. Again, this is going to be a special place on my Oxford University Press shelf. Great volume. Love the artwork. I think this is Ninurta, one of the gods of that region. Ninurta and Marduk, I think, are 2 names sort of for the same entity. Marduk was kind of came along later, and Ninurta was the earlier version of that. Kind of like how Greece and Rome just sort of adopted the Greek pantheon, but the names were different. Same basic thing going on here. The stories are fascinating, every single one of them. Of course, there are, being as old as they are, there are major sections that are still missing. Maybe one day we'll find them. How cool would that be? Someday to get to read the entirety, every word of the Epic of Gilgamesh, just as it was 5,000 years ago. Wouldn't that be awesome? Maybe it'll happen someday. Who knows? But I guess that's something that we can wish for. In the meantime, if you're gonna pick up any version of any of these stories, this is the one that you need to grab. It's really great. Check it out and let me know. What do you think? Are you interested in these kinds of ancient mythologies, legends, stories at all? Is there anything that you would suggest? I'd love to know something along this line that I might be interested in. With that, I will leave you and get about my day. Got a lot of work done today. We're going to head out for a couple of graduations this weekend. Maybe, hopefully, next week we'll get back with a bunch more videos because I'm tired of neglecting this channel and I miss being in conversations with you folks as well. So we'll see you next time. Have a great week. Have a great weekend whenever you may be watching this. Until next time, Brad out. Bye.